You're watching Alaska's news source.
Everybody's cell phone just had an alert go off and said there's a tsunami alert, and then people are like, "Wow, we didn't hear any sirens or anything like that," which is kind of unusual.
Well, it scared a lot of us, and over the past few hours, Alaskans have tried to get back to normal. That's after a 7.3 magnitude earthquake struck south of Kodiak this afternoon. A tsunami warning, which is now canceled, was issued for Kodiak to just east of Unalaska. People were urged to move inland or to go to high ground immediately after the large quake.
Now, this is video from the Tsunami ferry as the tsunami sirens were going off. The captain made sure to check his surroundings, make any possible adjustments, and proceeded with caution.
Sandpoint was one of the closest to the quake, where the people felt that power of the shaking.
Aftershocks still being felt in the area at this time. And here's what City Administrator Debbie Schmidt had to say about how they responded.
We had a big earthquake, biggest one I've ever been in. Just shaking. I was at home for lunch, and the house was shaking, and things were falling, and drawers and cupboard doors were coming open. No damage, though.
The Earthquake Center also spoke to Alaska's news source. They say the occurrence was pretty odd.
The occurrence of this earthquake is not necessarily a surprise, but what does have our attention is this is the fifth earthquake exceeding magnitude 7 in a very small stretch of the Aleutian, just a couple hundred kilometers since 2020. We're clearly going through a period of what one can only call geologic unrest.
And Chief Meteorologist Melissa Fry was on the air within minutes of that shaking, letting people know what to expect. Melissa, is there any threats to these areas?
Unfortunately, no. The tsunami threats have all come to an end. There will be still some impacts and activity in the area, certainly from aftershocks in the area. I want to show you exactly where this hit. Again, magnitude 7.3, 50 miles south of Sandpoint. It was only 12 miles deep. It did strike at 12:37, as you heard people, on lunch break for many of them when the shaking started in the area. It was this stretch spreading from just east of Unalaska through Kodiak that was under that threat for a tsunami. And a tsunami was generated. Again, all of those threats have now been ended, but we are still seeing aftershocks in the area, including some larger than magnitude 5.0, and those will likely continue for days, if not weeks to come. But again, there is no longer any tsunami threat. The tsunami warning and advisory have both been canceled. A tsunami was confirmed and observed in Sandpoint. Relatively small wave, but small sea level changes, they are still possible as the surface of the ocean was shooken up with this earthquake. And we do continue to have aftershocks there in the area. Now, I want to bring in Dave Snyder, the tsunami warning coordinator with NOAA's Tsunami Warning Center. Dave, thank you for joining us here. Thank you for getting out the alerts there, your team. I know always working for this exact situation. Of course, you were on it today. Can you explain why was that warning first issued?
Sure thing. Out of an abundance of caution, we have to move fast. We are always watching for earthquakes that could move a substantial amount of water from the ocean to dry places where we all live. And because that zone of the earth that it sounded like Dr. Mike West was talking about is right off of our shore, we have to move super fast. And the fastest thing we can do to move and alert the most amount of people in that tight space is issue a tsunami warning. And so because that earthquake was so close to the coast, because it could have been moving water, we needed to let people know and get that message out right away.
So the potential was there for a large, damaging, inundating wave, but we did see that being downgraded to an advisory. What happened that allowed your team to drop it to an advisory?
Sure thing. When we first issue that alert, we're watching for those earthquakes that are generally larger than about a 7.0 when they're close to Alaska like that. And so we went right into that warning procedure. But as soon as we do that, the very next thing that we're looking for is to confirm that a tsunami exists or that it doesn't. And we started watching for the NOAA dart buoys that are just offshore. One of those not too far away from Sandpoint was the first to detect that tsunami wave, and we did confirm a wave existed. So that was important information. Once we have that, we can start watching for a full round of information that helps us forecast and confirm that other locations may see that tsunami arrive at other dart stations or also at the coast. The very next part of that process is then watching for the tsunami to arrive at the coastline. And we saw that at the Sand Point station, where we first measured a smaller wave, but then a second wave, because there can always be more than just one wave. And we measured that wave at about 7 centimeters, or about 0.2 of a foot, which really isn't very big and certainly not impactful. But that's all really good news. And by that process and making sure that we weren't seeing any other secondary impacts from underwater landslides or landslides along the coastline that could also create tsunamis, after we ruled out all of that and watched just a little bit longer, we were able to reduce the alert to an advisory and then to fully cancel that alert about 2 hours later.
So you can see there's a lot that's happening there in a very short amount of time, all happening in real time. Now that that has been canceled and people are kind of getting back to their daily lives, what would you encourage people to remember about this event in preparation for the next one?
Well, exactly like Dr. West was saying, we live in a very seismically active area in the country and certainly in our state. And for folks in Southwest Alaska and South Central Alaska, and really all of coastal Alaska, it's really important to understand what you need to do in that first few moments of alert and panic, right? Let's make a plan. The folks that called in from Chignik today and that checked in from Sand Point, they were already moving to high ground because they recognized the potential warning signs, the natural warning signs of a tsunami. They felt the ground shaking. They may have seen the ocean doing something strange or unusual. Those are all great signals to go get out of the way right now and then seek further information. And then they got our alerts and they responded with that. So having a plan, whether you're a mariner and you're heading out to sea tonight, or your family is near the coast, or you live up on a hill in that area, have a plan, make a plan with your work, school, home, church, business, whatever it takes, but make sure you talk through that plan, practice your plan, and have different layers to get that and ways to get information that's important to act on. So if you like using email, make sure you can get email alerts. Make sure you're checked in with KTUU and you've got your Channel 2 weather alerts dialed in for tsunamis. Get the free FEMA app. All these different ways are wonderful ways to get information, but don't ever rely on just one, because unfortunately we've seen in recent news in the lower 48 lately that having just one way doesn't always work. And so we want to make sure that never happens here in Alaska.
All right, Dave Snyder again with the Tsunami Warning Center. Thank you so much for joining us here. And again, bottom line, the threat has ended. There is no longer a concern for tsunami danger. We are still seeing aftershocks in the area. And John and Rebecca, as those aftershocks come in, we'll continue to let you know the latest information.
Thank you so much. Well, the Coast Guard evacuated as precaution.
Air crews also activated, put on standby for potential use. Here's the Coast Guard. Here's what they had this afternoon.
The most important thing is that they are aware of the local warnings and that they are following the direction and guidance from local officials.
Although there was no danger to Homer, the Homer Spit did evacuate after initial warnings went out. This due to what Mayor Rachel Lord says, an abundance of caution. She says it's a busy time of year in the area, lots of tourists in town for the season, and there is just one road on and off the Spit, which makes moving people and equipment a challenge. Lord says she's grateful for the cooperation of city officials and folks in town for taking the warning seriously.
I really recognize how disruptive it is to folks who have plans to be eating lunch and going out on the water and doing other things. And it can be just incredibly disruptive and also very alarming, especially if you're not from a place where you've experienced this sort of thing before. And it should always be alarming to all of us, even those of us who, live through tsunami warnings with some regularity.
Lord says city managers always take these warnings seriously and initiate evacuation protocols until they get better information as it becomes available. Homer was removed from the tsunami warning zone just after 1:30 p.m.
And of course, many people were out when all this happened. That includes the popular Two Sisters restaurant in Homer. One of the co-owners tells us she made sure her customers were safe, but also didn't want to freak anyone out.
It's better to just err on the side of caution and, get the heck out of here. But because we've been through this so many times and we had so much happening right at that moment, hot soup on the stove, things in the oven, lots going on. We were like, let's just make sure that it's really going to be something before we, just bail on everything.
And of course, she says that she's happy it wasn't too serious and everyone is safe, just like all of us feel right now.